All right, let's just jump right in. We all know how a virus spreads, right? A cough, a sneeze, and it's on its way. But what if I told you there's a different kind of contagion? One that moves at the speed of light, travels through fiber optic cables, and can absolutely wreck the entire global economy before you've even had your morning coffee.
Well, back in September 2008, that's pretty much exactly what happened. This wasn't some slow-moving illness, with a cough and a sniffle. No, this was a sudden, massive cardiac arrest. The entire system that moves money around the world, I'm talking about the money businesses used for payroll, the money families use for mortgages, it just stopped. Froze solid.
And look, that is not an exaggeration. It really was like someone just ripped the power cord out of the wall. Everything seized up. Businesses suddenly couldn't get the loans they needed just to make payroll. People watched their retirement accounts, their pensions, just evaporate in real time. The whole thing was teetering right on the edge of a complete, total collapse. So the big question is, how did this all happen so unbelievably fast? Well, to really get it, you have to stop thinking about it as just a financial problem. You got to see it for what it was, a pandemic, a financial contagion, spreading risk through a system that was built for one thing and one thing only, speed, not safety. And this is what a full-blown outbreak looks like, 50%. The Nifty 50 crash back in the 1970s is a perfect and kind of scary example of just how devastating this kind of contagion can be. It was a bubble, and it looks eerily similar to parts of our market today, by the way, where the stock market was just sliced in half. Gone. Wiped out.
And this quote, man, it gets to such a crucial point. See, we've gotten kind of used to markets bouncing back pretty quick, right? A little dip, then a V-shaped recovery. But a true systemic crisis, that doesn't just heal itself. It leaves deep, permanent scars. It took 8 years, 8 long years for the market to just crawl back to where it was. Think about that. Investors were basically trapped in financial purgatory for almost a decade.
Okay, so if the crisis was the disease, then what was the germ, right? What was that initial pathogen that got into the system and made it so sick? Well, it all started with something that was supposed to be the absolute bedrock of the American dream, getting a mortgage.
Yeah, you heard that right. No income, no job, and no assets. Banks were literally handing out huge loans to people with absolutely no way to pay them back. I mean, it went way beyond risky. It was just absurd. It got to the point where if you had a pulse, you could get a mortgage. This was a financial virus being cooked up in a lab.
And here's the thing you have to understand. The real danger wasn't that a few of these loans would go bad. The danger was baked into the design. These things were basically built to fail from the start. And millions of them were just pumped into the financial system like little time bombs, just waiting to go off.
Okay, so we've got our pathogen, these toxic ninja loans. But how on earth did a housing problem in, Phoenix and Miami infect the entire planet? The answer is the transmission network, a network more complex and interconnected than any airline map you've ever seen, and it has a name, Wall Street.
And this is exactly how the sickness spread. It was like a 4-step recipe for global disaster. First, create the virus, the ninja loans. Step 2, Wall Street takes millions of these bad loans and bundles them all together into these super complex products called CDOs. Now, step 3, this was the really sneaky part. They got the official safety inspectors, the ratings agencies, to stamp these bundles with AAA, the highest safety rating you can get. Perfectly safe, they said. And then the final step, sell these financial time bombs to pension funds, to cities, to unsuspecting investors all over the world.
I mean, it's the perfect description, right? Wall Street's financial alchemy. This was the absolute core of the problem. They took garbage loans, literal garbage, wrapped them up in some really complicated math, and somehow convinced the entire world that they were as safe as solid gold. The risk never went away. It was just hidden, buried deep inside.
So once the entire global system was just saturated with these toxic assets, all it needed was a single spark. Because the most powerful accelerant in any pandemic, whether it's biological or financial, it's not the germ itself, it's fear. Pure, simple panic.
And on September 15th, 2008, we got our super spreader event. Lehman Brothers, a 158-year-old pillar of Wall Street, went bankrupt. Just gone. And the message that sent around the world was terrifyingly clear. If a bank that big, that old can just die overnight, then nobody is safe.
I mean, just look at the speed on this timeline. It's breathtaking. We're not talking about months or weeks here. This all went down in a matter of days. AIG, this massive global insurance company, needed a government bailout the very next day after Lehman fell. The dominoes just started falling so fast, one after another, that panic went viral. And the whole system, just like we said, froze solid.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? A Jenga tower. Every single one of those bad loans was a loose block. Every one of those complex CDOs was another shaky layer added on top. And when Lehman Brothers, one of the biggest blocks at the base, was yanked out, the entire thing came crashing down.
So, okay, that brings us to the big, inevitable question, doesn't it? The world survived the 2008 plague. We put in all these new rules, new regulations. We're vaccinated against this stuff now, right? Well, maybe, or maybe, just maybe, we're busy brewing up a brand new strain of the virus.
You know, if you're getting a little sense of déjà vu right now, you're definitely not alone. There's that famous saying, often attributed to Mark Twain, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And right now, you can hear the market rhyming pretty loudly with some of the biggest bubbles in history. Just look at the evidence here. Back in the 70s, you had the Nifty 50. These were considered bulletproof stocks, one-decision stocks they called them. You just buy them and never, ever sell. Sound familiar? Well, today we have the Magnificent Seven. These tech giants dominate the market with an incredibly similar level of concentration and, yeah, that same one-decision mentality from investors.
And what about the valuations? Honestly, they're priced as if gravity just doesn't apply to them. Take a look at this. Polaroid, back in the Nifty 50 days, peaked at a price-to-earnings ratio of 90. McDonald's, 86. Today, a company like Tesla has seen multiples that are even more extreme. The story investors are telling themselves today is the exact same story they told themselves 50 years ago. These companies are different, they're untouchable, they'll grow forever.
But hey, it's not just the stock market we should be watching. There's a new potential pathogen growing, mostly in the shadows. And this number, $2.5 trillion, that's the estimated size of the global private credit market. It's a corner of the financial world that has just quietly exploded into an absolute juggernaut. And here's why you should care about that. This huge market is almost totally opaque. It's not like the stock market. There are no public price quotes, no central exchange. So nobody really knows what any of this stuff is actually worth. Until, of course, someone stops paying their bills. The whole industry is basically running on one single, very hopeful assumption, that the borrowers will just keep paying.
Which all leads back to that Warren Buffett quote, right? What we learn from history is that people don't learn from history. So, are we destined to get sick all over again? You know, financial systems, just like viruses, they evolve. The next crisis probably won't look exactly like the last one. But as long as human psychology, that mix of fear, greed, and that powerful desire to believe this time it's different, as long as that stays the same, the risk of another pandemic is always going to be with us. The only real question is, what's the next pathogen going